So the first question I have for you, Dan, is how important is motivation in starting to acquire a language?
Well, thank you for having me. The first question, how important is motivation? So, I mean, you have to have a
Mhm.
concrete purpose, I think, in order to learn a language. But let's qualify it first by saying, what level do you want to achieve? Do you want to get by? Do you want to hold down a job? Do you want to have an advanced level or a superior level of the language? So it all
Mhm.
depends on what your goals are. But I would say no matter what your goal is, you kind of have to have a good reason. If you don't have a good reason to use the language, if you're not going to use the language regularly, you're going to struggle with learning it. So that's why so many people, I think, struggle with learning languages in schools. I mean, I think back to when I was a kid, what was my motivation in school? It was definitely lacking in some cases. So I would say if you don't have a concrete purpose or opportunities to use the language, it is going to be difficult. It's not going to be impossible. It's just going to take longer. You're going to see more sort of ups and downs. You're going to see more exaggerated what's called U-shaped behavior, where one day you're using the language really well for your level, and then other days you're going to be forgetting words or stumbling over words or
Mhm.
forgetting, which grammar points to use, and then the next day could go back up. So that gets more pronounced the longer you go without
So, what,
using the language.
Dan, what about some tips for staying motivated when progress feels slow? And like you say, in this U-shaped kind of loop of progress, like some days are good, some days are not good for language learning. Well, how do you stay motivated?
So again, I think if you have a concrete purpose for using the language, that it becomes your motivation. And I mean, some would argue that motivation from the outside or extrinsic motivation is not as effective as motivation that comes from within or intrinsic motivation. But if you need to learn the language, you are going to learn it. Think about all the people you know who are immigrants, for example. They oftentimes in the United States, for example, they may take some formal English classes, they may not. But if you're working in the United States, you achieve a certain level of English over time just because you have to in many cases. So I would say if you have this kind of purpose, if you have these opportunities to learn to use the language, your motivation will be high, whether it's extrinsic or intrinsic, whether it comes from without or from within. So where you're going to see a problem is if you don't have regular opportunities to use the language, if you don't have a concrete purpose, your motivation then has to switch to something a little less pressing. So there I feel like the role of intrinsic motivation becomes more important. You have to really want it in that case, and you have to be disciplined. So when you don't feel like practicing, you have to practice, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, right? You have to make yourself do it, sort of like
Mhm.
exercise, right? Like some days you're like really motivated. You hit the gym and you're there for like an hour and a half. Other days, I mean, you really have to drag yourself there. And I think learning a language is the same. Playing sports is the same. So if you played sports, for example, or if you currently play sport, you realize there's some days you really want to do it and some days you really don't. But regardless of what you want to do, you have to do it. So I would say if you have motivation from within, it's going to be easier.